Okay. So, hey everyone, welcome to the 50th edition of the Weekly Drills. After running these for an entire year, we've decided to make this one a little bit extra special. This week's theme was Fortnite backling, and we could see you all had a lot of fun. So thank you so much, everyone, for contributing your work. This week we have a guest judge, Justin, who we're really excited about. So I guess, Justin, thanks again for jumping on board. Really excited to have you. Did you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. My name is Justin Holt, and I am a senior texture artist at Epic Games currently. Very briefly, I spent about the last 15 years in visual effects for film, working on, I think I've worked on almost 50 films or titles or whatever you want to call it at this point, before making the switch to games. And I've been at Epic for about a year and a half.
Amazing.
What's your favorite movie you've worked on?
Favorite movie I've worked on? Is it the one? I have a favorite, but everybody hated it, which tends to be. Chappie was my favorite one for sure.
I love that one. Oh, that was so good.
See, when I talk to people individually, they love it, but generally speaking, people hated it. And we really thought it was going to be awesome. We really thought people were going to love it, but the critics just, dismissed it immediately. Yeah. But that was really cool.
The first film you worked on, Justin, was it Rango?
No, the first film I worked on was Happy Feet.
Oh, what? You worked on Happy Feet?
That's so
yeah, we did a very small sequence at Rhythm and Hues.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't texturing. I was a lighting TD. So that was my first job.
There you go. Wow.
Yeah. And that was the. Say again.
You specialized as a character texture artist predominantly, or you were sort of doing a bit of everything?
No, I did everything. Like even on Rango, I was doing characters, and then I kind of helped oversee with another painter the entire town of Dirt. So we did all the environments as well. So it was kind of whatever I can get my hands on, I try to paint. So whether that's environment or character.
And like I was going, like you probably didn't sell yourself that well, Justin. Like I've known you for years. We've crossed over on different projects on our visual effects sort of journey. But what I would say about you, Justin, is you've supported young people on that journey as well. Like through your personal website, training, working at Think Tank Training Center. You've been an industry mentor for a lot of people for a number of years. And I think, specifically with the texturing side of things, I know a lot of people have been inspired by your work and helping young people. So if you haven't checked out Justin's work, then, go check out his website. I don't know if you've got your URL, Justin, or
you can probably just find me. Yeah, you can find me on ArtStation. That's probably the best place, the most current work. But I appreciate it, and I think I firmly believe that if you're in a position to give back, it's an actual obligation to do so. So I was more than happy when I started at Think Tank to give back to the community that treated me so well and gave me what I was looking for. So I'm more than happy to pay it forward.
Yeah, and you've also been a judge on the rookies for I don't know how many years now, but again, thank you for that. What I would say, just before we all kick off, everybody, there is an opportunity within the Rookie Awards this year as well. I mean, Epic Games are always looking for amazing young talent. They've been supporters of finding entry-level positions and juniors. So part of this year's Rookie Awards is that they're actually doing a telephone sort of interview. I think it's with 5 people that get selected from the game design and development category. So if you're unaware of that, you should definitely check out the Rookie Awards for this year. But yeah, I'm going to hand it over to you guys because I'm really excited to see the entries for this 50th Weekly Drills. Can't believe it's been 50, but yeah.
Over a year.
It sucks and it's great because I didn't think we'd be still locked down, but it's got another 50 going on.
All right, shall I switch over?
Yeah.
All right. So the first one we picked was this little guy. So the mushroom one. So Justin, did you want to share your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, so I had a quick look at this. I think it's a really interesting concept. It definitely is stylized and whimsical, and it's certainly things we go for in the Fortnite world. I think the modeling is great with regards to that kind of whimsical style. I think one thing the person needs to be mindful of is, and I have a habit of doing this because I'm coming from film as well, is to pack in as much detail as I can in the textures. And often, especially in the world of Fortnite and anything stylized, really, it's finding that Goldilocks area between, too much and not enough. And quite often in these stylized worlds, less is more. So I think my only critique would be to kind of pull back on some of that knee-jerk reaction to wanting to add in detail and fidelity, and relying more on larger kind of generalized shapes and color, and specifically, roughness. I think I'm going to be touching upon roughness for most of the entries, because that's the one kind of MVP map that I rely heavily on in terms of trying to find something that is interesting but not simple. And often in color, you can go too far with that. So I do rely heavily on finding interesting ways to break up a surface through roughness, and that's not necessarily tied to color. And that definitely helps with bringing in some kind of, I don't know, interest into the texture work, the materials. So overall, it's a really cool piece. But if you can pull back a little bit more on the photorealism, and I use that word lightly, it's obviously not photoreal, but in the world of Fortnite, we're trying to go for more of a graphic style.
Amazing. Just out of curiosity, what details, if you could pick a few details that you'd like to pull away, what would you suggest?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the weathering on the tree in terms of the darker tones, the moss, anything that starts becoming high frequency noise, pull back on. We're looking for broad, even with the way the moss is masked on the surface, finding interesting ways to make that even a graphic line rather than that photoreal, noisy, organic edge. Just by simply changing the way that line works, immediately starts making it feel more stylized. And you could even maybe potentially keep some of that high frequency detail in the moss itself. But if you just change the way it blends between the wood and the moss itself, can dramatically change what you see from being realistic to stylized.
That's incredible. I think that's incredible advice. Shall we move on to the next one?
Sure.
So this guy.
So this one, very whimsical. I like it. So one thing I will touch upon, but it's not really my expertise, obviously, is modeling. But because I work so closely with modeling, there are things that I feel comfortable discussing with regards to maybe evolving certain models. So one thing that's really nice about this is you're getting a lot of nice stylized modeling here, but the proportions, I think, can be tweaked a bit. If you look at a lot of the back bling that we do, and even the characters and the pickaxes and stuff, there's a certain ratio in terms of scale to how we play with things. And for instance, it's an interesting shape, the backpack itself, but then you get details like, for instance, the water bottle, to me, is a bit more realistic than whimsical, and playing with scale can dramatically change the way that feels. And then in terms of textures, I think it's going in the right direction. My biggest critique would just be trying to find more clear material separation. So in stylized work, we're trying to keep things simple, right? But in order to not make it seem simple, we're trying to figure out ways to separate things. And the immediate thing we do is material separation. So trying to find ways to make leather really feel like leather. Just because it's stylized doesn't mean the material can't be realistic. And I think that's something that a lot of you guys can think about is I can provide stylized detailing to it, but the material itself, I can totally go with a photoreal leather, making that look like leather, but with stylized information in it. And then making things feel like cloth, making things feel like metal. I mean, I can see that you're playing a little bit with the metal there. But I think ultimately, most of these materials feel somewhat the same. It would be nice to see a difference in terms of a clear difference in materials of the blue wrapped sleeping bag or whatever, yoga mat or whatever that is, between the actual, I guess that's a leather bag strap or a fabric or whatever. So don't be afraid to add in fine detail like fabric weave. That's totally something that you can do in stylized work and make it work. So by introducing appropriate weave or leather wrinkling detail, it can immediately change things and still be stylized, because you're ultimately working on a stylized model, right? So there's only you don't have to. There is some forgiveness with regards to what kind of information you put in there.
Fantastic. All right. Thanks for the feedback, Justin.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, this guy. This was cool.
This one's very cool. Yeah, this one's pretty cool. I like this one a lot. In terms of style, it feels very Fortnite, I would say. It's got this nice chunkiness to it, and there's a really nice balance of details, but the details are still graphic, and I think that plays very, very well. I think all the color choices are nice. The color palette's really nice. The whole style is very interesting. But my biggest critique on this is going back to kind of segue into this one is material definition and separation. Ultimately, everything to me feels like the same material. So getting, if the blue gems or whatever, giving that a refractive crystal would be interesting. Making the leather feel more like leather versus, other sections, especially that skull. Yeah, I think if this could have gotten more material separation, I think the biggest problem is the roughness and reflection and the specular value of everything seems very uniform. And if you can kind of separate that, so even if you zoom out far, you can really get a sense of the materials. So I think that's the only thing that's really holding back this piece from being very successful, is just the materials. I think everything else is going for it. It's just trying to get clear graphic separation between materials is going to be the key for this one. But I really, really like it.
But also to make sure that when you're submitting things, because this is a great submission, shows your breakdowns, like wireframes, shaded views, like anything. Yeah. Like unfortunately, even if this, as great as this was, if you were to submit it on even like the main rookies thing, we have so many people, I would be like, oh, it's great, there's no breakdowns, and I'd move on. But it is really nice.
Yeah.
So I have a question. How could we make, for example, the leather, because we spoke about leather in the previous one.
Yep.
How could we go about making this feel more like leather without crossing the line of getting too photoreal? Because if we were to put a fine grain in there, I think it would start to look more photoreal.
Yeah, so that's okay, actually. Putting a leather grain in there is fine. One thing that you can keep it stylized is, you see the weathering on like the main book area where you get that dark leather to the lighter edges. If you chunk that up more, because right now I think arguably it's a bit photoreal. You're getting that like really even fade. You get this high frequency breakup. If you were to chunk that up even more and then put a leather grain on there, immediately you're getting this interesting stylized leather, right? Because the edge wear is stylistic, and it's more forgiving to have that with a photoreal leather grain than to not put a grain on at all. This is specifically talking, Fortnite. I think in other games this would be the go-to. Like this is what I see this a lot in other games. Materials all kind of feel the same, but it's stylized. Whereas in Fortnite, we're really trying to push very clear material separation. And what we're doing lately is experimenting a lot more with the fine details and finding that again Goldilocks balance. So the roughness breakup is really cool, but you know, I would have liked to see a different roughness to the black versus the brown. Right now it all feels the same, right? So from a distance you're getting that clean highlight that's not clean, but you're getting that consistent highlight across the brown and the black. It would have been cool to see the black even rougher and the brown shinier, because the brown doesn't, in my opinion, wouldn't get as much wear because you have all these border kind of edges protecting it with the black bound. So the brown leather could even be a little bit cleaner with a stylized edge. You know, you see the bottom where you get that highlight edge on the brown leather on that edge there. Yeah, there, and then to the left where you get that yeah. So all this breakup on this edge, very photoreal. If you chunk that up just like graphic lines, like a literal straight, you know, angled line that goes through, that starts looking more stylized, but you're still maintaining that high frequency detail, and it does work.
All right, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one we had was this one. Let me just zoom in. The Barracuda?
Yeah.
Yeah, this was wicked.
This one's fantastic. I think this one is, of all the things I've been talking about, I think this hits pretty much all of them with regards to really cool design, graphic, clean, stylized, very clear material separation. I can see what is potentially an anodized metal or matte metal versus a chrome versus glass. Very clean and clear. There's no ambiguity here. And, you know, it's got this neon green. And I think in their submission, they were referencing a character.
Let me just move forward. Yeah, this one.
Yeah. So this is another thing that's really fantastic is you can see their thought process here. It's like, okay, this belongs to a character, right? And all backpacks belong to someone. So the fact that they tried to tailor this to this character, I think, is phenomenal. And they did a great job. It does look like something they would, you know, strap to their back. So I think, honestly, the only thing is the roughness maps. I think, you know, finding a way to get more graphic in some of the breakups. So you get these long black panels on the center of the canister. They're very cool, but they're very clean. If you can find a way to just broadly chunk that up with some graphic roughness breakup, and it's subtle, you know, you don't have to do anything that's overbearing, just something subtle, I think would really go a long way. Also, you know, the chipping that you have at the bottom on the horizontal metal rings is very cool, but again, make it more graphic. You know, you're getting this kind of very high frequency photoreal edge to some of the wear and tear. If you just make that a little bit more graphic, I think this thing's a home run.
That's great advice. And what did you think about the liquid inside as well? Because I thought like it was quite stylized, and I think that's what made it as well. Like awesome. You have that nice contrast. Yeah,
it's and that's the other thing is providing. What I like about this is it also provides a really interesting story. Like you want to know, what is that liquid? Why is that in there? I mean, is it poisonous? Is it like super serum? Like what's going on here? And I think that's cool. You know, whenever you have something that elicits an emotional response, I think that's the key to any art, right? If it elicits emotional response, I think that's successful art. And this definitely did that for me. And it's a very, very cool piece. And what I like about it is they were conservative. You know, they didn't think about overdoing it. They didn't try to, you know, hit the grand slam. They kept it simple. They referenced a character, and they tried to, you know, make it live in that world. And I think it's really great.
Yes, I could it really easily just slot in to the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nice. All right. So the next one we pulled up was the witchy one.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, this is very cool. It seems like they were definitely referencing some character because I can see some hints of some design language there. I think the stylization is great. But again, my critique, like many of them, is the material separation. You know, trying to find a way to get leather to feel like leather. I guess it's a cast iron pot to feel like cast iron. The hat to feel like fabric. the bag, the pouch to feel like a different kind of leather or a different kind of material. I think that's the one thing that's hurting this one is just, material separation. If this person can really make all these materials feel realistic, I think this would be a very successful piece.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing here is just playing with roughness maps. So I think, if you go back one or back a couple to the one more. Yeah. The map breakdown.
Oh, the map. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's quite flat. Isn't it?
Yeah. So you can see that all the values, I'm assuming that's the roughness map, all the values are basically the same. So it's very difficult to get any kind of material read on that. So, playing more with roughness breakup as well, not just value change, but adding actual breakup in the roughness map is going to be key.
So, you'd suggest putting some texture maps in there?
Yeah. Like if you're going to do a leather, put in any kind of secondary roughness map that would support leather, that would support fabric, anything, especially metals, especially, that cauldron thing that would be heavily used. And so, making that feel more worn. And, the roughness map is really the MVP. Because, of all the maps, at a certain point, the further you zoom out, all the other maps don't matter. Color goes to blurred pixels. Displacement, bump, normal maps go to blurred pixels. But it's the roughness, it's the specular values. Even from a distance, you can immediately tell what's shiny and what isn't. And that is the key map that people need to spend the most time on, in my opinion, especially dealing with, honestly, it's in film work as well. The roughness and the spec maps are the most valuable maps because they inform materials even from a distance. And so many people forget that, and they spend all their time in the color, all their time in the displacement, but from mid-ground shot, you lose all that anyway. So
that's really super interesting because and I also like when I'm painting roughness maps, like it's always good, I find, to add different details to what you do in the color, so that when the light cycles around, you get like a bit of a different, interesting pattern that sort of appears when the light goes over it. So
absolutely, it adds a visual interest and complexity that you can't get by just duping the color into the roughness or this, whatever. I always have independent details in my roughness maps, always. Because it just informs a more complex material.
Yeah, and it lets you know like how the light's actually going to react off of it too. And it's like when you look at a linoleum floor, it's the same color, it's flat, but you never know if someone spilled something and then dust got stuck to it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's a breakup. It helps tell the story.
Yep, especially with smudges and smears on really highly reflective surfaces. None of that's going to be in the color. It's all in the roughness and specs. So.
Yeah.
It's about telling that story.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So we're good to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
We good. So we picked this one. It's the Tiger Shield. So what were your thoughts on this one?
Can you? Is there another? Are there more images to this?
Yeah, I can sort of just scroll through.
Yeah. Just scroll through for a second.
Yeah.
So I think the shield portion is really interesting. I think the cloth is a bit too much with regards to the modeling. It seems like a, I don't know, end cloth or Marvelous Designer type thing. It's very realistic. And then also, there's a strange disconnect between the really high frequency patterning on the cloth versus the shield. I feel it's informing two different scales. I don't know how big this thing is because of the scale of the cloth. I don't know if the shield is really small or big, or if the cloth is really big and that means the shield's really big. It's kind of confusing to me. So, trying to find trying to normalize that scale in terms of that detail is going to be important. But also, again, material separation. There isn't a lot of it right now. Especially on that shield, there's a lot of opportunity to get different kinds of metal playing, and right now it all kind of feels like the same. So playing with different roughnesses, playing with different metallic values, that's going to be very important to get interesting different kinds of metal. And even if it's not a metal, say it's like a powder coated metal, so you could get that it's not actually metallic. You just have different details on that. That could be really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's good advice. And I don't know what your thoughts are, Justin, but for me, like, the cloth looks really flat versus the shield, which has this gradient on it. So it sort of, again, doesn't lend itself to that, like, that it should be in the same world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And trying to get some kind of, if it is a cloth, trying to get some kind of Fresnel onto that cloth just to make it feel like cloth, I think would be a huge help in terms of bringing out some of the shape. But I agree. I think, yeah, there's kind of an imbalance there.
Yeah, nice. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Little froggy dude.
All right.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, this one's cool.
There we go.
Yeah, it's okay. It's funny that the zipper's on the mouth. It's kind of like, it's kind of dark, but it's kind of cool.
I mean, is it darker if it's on the stomach or something?
Yeah, maybe.
This is dark in general, I suppose.
Yeah, and yeah, because it's such a whimsical thing. I think it's really cool. My only thing is I don't know what that material is. I don't know if it's a balloon or if it's a fabric. It's very difficult to know because of the way it's been painted and modeled.
Do we have any reference that's shown?
Yeah, is there any reference?
Reference, yeah. Hold on. Here we go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a
okay. So it's like a vinyl. Yeah. Okay, that would make sense then. So I think getting it to feel more like vinyl, because right now it feels very, very rough, and I think you could play up again the material difference, make that metal feel really like metal. Kind of work in. I feel like the zipper itself feels a bit untextured. In terms of darkening in the crevices, a little bit of roughness breakup, a little bit of value change, because that thing's been open and closed presumably a lot, and right now it doesn't feel like that. So that feels a little unfinished, and then making that feel like, it would be cool to make it feel like a high gloss vinyl. I think that would be interesting, and then a little bit more reflection in the eyes, the button eyes. But generally speaking, just back to the same kind of consistent thing as material separation is going to be the key. And not just that, and this is a good example for this, is defining a material, like really going for one. Like, here's a specific vinyl I found that I love, that I think would work well. Like, so there's one that looks like it's cloth and there's one that looks like it's vinyl.
Yeah.
And I see they reference some of the back bling on the bottom left. But you can see can you zoom in on that at all?
I can get in about that far.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, this is a great example. Even from this distance, you can see roughness breakup. You can see material separation here. And that's going back to what I was explaining to you before, is that even from this distance, you can inform material separation. Whereas with this frog that this person's done, even up close right now, it's difficult to tell what that material is. So I think getting something that's relatable. I think that's the problem, is I couldn't relate to this material because you see materials all day, every day, and it's a subconscious thing. And so when you see something and someone's going for a vinyl, oh, I've seen that vinyl before, I know what that looks like, and immediately it's a trigger in your mind saying, oh, that's believable because I've seen something like that. Whereas right now I don't know what that is, so it's difficult. It's kind of this ambiguity.
And the good thing about this is too, this is the reason why it's good to have your reference up there, because before he wouldn't have anything to critique off of. If you have a reference up there, you can start looking at it. But also it brings up a good thing he brought on. Don't have too much reference. Like, once you choose what you're going to do, don't be like, oh, it could be this, could be that. Be like, all right, this is going to be the surface type. This is going to be the color. Like, identify it. It's going to help you also be able to showcase your work.
Absolutely agree. Defining boundaries and limitations early on is going to be vital, especially in these challenges that are very quick, to getting successful results. If you're flip-flopping between 5 different designs, 5 different images that you're trying to hit, you're never going to get something that looks right. Stick to one master concept that you dig. Ultimately, it's got to be something that you enjoy. So pick something that you really like, because it's going to be more enjoyable to work on. And then ultimately, you're going to get better results. So if you go back to the breakdown of the maps, Yeah, we can see. Yeah, so right now there's very little, if any, roughness breakup on the actual body of it. And so this is a good example of trying to get, roughness variation in crevices. So it's rougher in the crevices, maybe dust buildup. Getting broad roughness breakup on the actual surface of the thing rather than a flat. I mean, there's a little bit of compression here, so I can't tell, but ultimately it's very flat. And then some of the details that they do have on the buttons and the mouth, it feels very haphazard. There doesn't seem to be a rhyme or reason to it. In fact, it looks like there's no influence to it. So getting an influence to the roughness is going to be imperative. I think the best successful example of the roughness influence is on that patch, where clearly the stitches are rougher and the patches. So that, doing stuff like that, more of that is going to be important on a character like this, especially since the whole body is just one thing. So you've really got to utilize the roughness even more because you don't have multiple materials to play off of.
Some sound advice. Cool. All right. So let's move on to this guy, the jetpack one.
Yeah, this is cool.
Yeah, this is working. Is that working? No, one sec.
Yeah, let's quickly cycle through some of these. Okay.
Wireframe. So a nice breakdown.
Yep.
Sort of gone through some of our maps.
Yeah.
And okay, so it's good to see a scale ref as well to see how big.
Yeah. So the scale it's pretty big. It's pretty big. Remember, with Fortnite, it's over the shoulder, right? So if you go to aim with any kind of weapon, that's going to really completely block the view. So scale is important. Generally speaking, I think it's an interesting design. I think they were going in the right direction for the materials. You can see some different material breakup, but there are things that feel unfinished, especially kind of that brassy metal. All that feels very consistent roughness, consistent color. Breaking that up it will really help, especially because this thing seems like it's not brand new. So anywhere you can inform that, and then chipping detail is going to be really important on this thing. Nice graphic chipping, just to inform the fact that it's used, it moves, it's been banged up, it's been hit, it's seen some action, to give more, because right now there is some of that on the blue, but it's very difficult to read from this distance. So getting more graphic with that wear is going to be important to tell a story. And then here's a good example with the roughness map, very consistent. I think getting rough, especially with metals, it's any kind of hard surface, it's going to be really important to get interesting roughness breakup in the metals. And this is going to come down to the reference you've chosen to hit, and the images you're looking to use for inspiration is going to be very important. So, and then if we cycle through to the beauty.
Just something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is really interesting, but I think a little bit more, getting those brassy metals a bit more resolved and adding a little bit more story to the weathering will go a long way.
And I was actually going to ask you as well, something I noticed with this, the metal map is sort of halfway in between black and white. So, I mean, I don't know about games, but I know in VFX, having those half metallic sort of materials, it's kind of it's a non-existent material, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I can't.
Halfway in between.
Yeah, I can't speak to how they do it in all game studios, but yeah, it's generally speaking, I think it's important, especially working with the PBR workflow, to go with white or black values. That's going to be really important. So, because those half values get kind of odd.
All right. Cool. Let's move on to the monkey dude. This one.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cute.
Obviously referencing yeah, there we go. That character. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's cycle through some of the images. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have some nice fabric.
Yeah.
Separations.
Cool. So I think the modeling is really cool. The zipper detail is like really, really high frequency, and it completely doesn't fit with the chunky kind of stylized modeling of everything else. You know, you get that really big stitching on the top of the bag, but then you get this really almost realistic zipper stitch. If you were to make that more, you know, way less frequency, a bit chunkier, I think would go a long way, especially like the zipper tabs themselves. They feel like they're pulled from an actual zipper, right? So finding a way to make that feel stylized in scale and shape is going to help kind of make this feel more resolved. I think the bag itself obviously could use roughness breakup, materials, you know, definition. You know, you have all this really nice pink piping, making that feel like a really high gloss vinyl, and then making the purple feel like a fairly used fabric or leather or whatever you want to do. Just getting that, I think, would be an interesting, again, material separation. There's a weird kind of cloudiness on the inside of the top of the bag. I think that seems a little ambiguous and unresolved. I'm not quite sure what they're going with there, especially on the side with the weathering. So all that weathering, if you could make that, it just feels like someone took a cloud brush and painted that, right? So making that feel a bit more deliberate, I think, is going to be important. The sock monkey is really cool. It looks like there's some sort of triplanar blend on that last image of the fabric of the head. One more back, like on the top, like above the ear. Yeah, like it's kind of going over the ear to the front. So that's one thing when you're dealing. I'm sure the person who did this started kicking themselves, because when you're dealing with this very graphic fabric, UVs are going to be everything. If you don't have good UVs, then it's going to be an absolute nightmare. And you can kind of tell that on the tail, you're getting some weird directionality because of the UVs. So I think my one word of advice for something like this is spend more time doing the UVs and making sure those are clean. That will facilitate and work with pure tileable weave. And your life is going to be 100% easier and less of a headache. Because right now there's a lot of directions going on. There's a little bit of stretching, a little bit of warping. So it kind of takes you out of this fabric a bit. So yeah, spending a little bit more time on that, I think, is going to be key. But it's an interesting fabric. You know, maybe getting some Fresnel on there would be cool as well. Make it feel even more fuzzier. And then the top of the head, not quite sure what kind of material they're going for with that. Seems like a hard plastic, which seems a bit odd for this monkey. I would have assumed another type of fabric, just a soft, maybe a different weave. But yeah, it's a really interesting. Yeah, I think it has some interesting elements to it. You know, you just got to bring it together, because the bag feels very, for lack of a better term, unfinished. Whereas it seems like they spent a lot more time on the monkey and trying to get that resolved between the two. Because right now they almost feel like they live in two separate worlds. Like the bag seems like it's in a much, much, much more stylized world than the monkey, because of you get this high frequency detailing.
Would you say that high frequency detail was successful to make it feel like fabric?
Yeah, I think it's good. I just think the problem is with the UVs and the triplanar work they're doing, or maybe just the regular UV projection. There's just some weirdness that's going on that ultimately hurts the look of it. You know, like for instance, the banana, if you look at that, you know, with that kind of weave, it should go in a curve as well, right? Right now you're getting this kind of vertical on a curve, so it doesn't feel like it was UV'd correctly. So it, you know, if you're thinking about this being made in real life, you know, you would get, you know, like a perpendicular parallel line going through the banana at a curve with the shape. Was right now it kind of goes off, so that takes you out of the illusion that it's an actual manufactured fabric. And then on the front, like above the left eye, screen left eye, you get this weird curve there. Yeah, so, you know, trying to resolve those is going to go a long way to making this feel resolved.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I think that's some really good advice. So thank you. All right, we have 2 more to go. So this one was the Buzz Lightyear.
Cool.
What were your thoughts on this one?
Love Buzz Lightyear. I think it's really cool. I feel like the colors are, they obviously going for Buzz Lightyear. I kind of want to see a more punchy, saturated color to it. It's feeling a little washed out. Especially mostly in the greens. I think it's the greens that are just, I wanted to see a little bit more saturation, a little bit darker, kind of a punchier green. I think it's a really cool concept. The problem I'm having modeling wise is that the top 3/4 of it feels this nice chunky stylized vibe, but then the very lower half of the thrusters starts to get really detailed. And it's throwing me off. Like if they would have just done like 2 thruster exhausts, you know, bigger, and 2 of them, it would fit with that chunky style. But right now it's just, there's a weird imbalance visually for me. And then the other thing is, it would have been really cool to get more material separation. Like I know it's a plastic toy, but there are things, and I know working with white can be very troublesome with regards to getting anything to read on it. But finding ways to make those feel slightly different, I think would have been interesting. But I understand where they're going with it. I think ultimately the direction they are going, I think, is successful. But like what are those? I guess there's screws in the top, in the green sections. You know, those feel, yeah, it could have been cool to make those feel more like chrome, you know, like a real metal screw or bolt that they put into this toy. It just feels a little dark. And I don't know, it's just a material thing. You know, I think there's too much diffuse or something, and not feeling like real metal.
Yeah. Just trying to see if we have any roughness maps.
Yeah. And then, roughness breakup's going to be key on this thing as well, because you get these big, broad, flat, not just flat, but curved, right? So anywhere you go on an angle, you're going to get a curved, you're going to get a highlight on a curve, and finding ways to break that up is going to be imperative to make it feel finished. And that's where I'm going back to the roughness maps is, you know, we're working with simple things, simple shapes, simple designs. Anywhere we can break up that simplicity without, you know, taking it out of the simplicity itself is going to be key. And that's the only place really to do that is roughness. So spending a bit more time there would be beneficial.
All right, nice one. Last one, we have the starfish.
Cool.
So I'll just cycle through it.
Yeah.
So a nice wireframe.
Yeah, that's nice. Hey, I know that guy.
All right. So I mean, not as an extensive breakdown as the others, but that's what we have.
So, again, the zipper could be. It just feels like it's not like it. You're getting the orange poking through, so I don't know exactly what the. It doesn't feel like if you unzip that, it's going to open. So fixing that would help. Getting the metal to feel like metal.
And like rotated it so it looked like it was a mouth.
Yeah, something like that. You know, and then making the metal feel like metal. The suckers, I think, you know, it could have been interesting to make them bigger, chunkier, and then extend them like you see on actual starfish. That would have been interesting. Because to me, this is something that could potentially have some kind of animation to it on someone's back where it, like the feet move up and down and stuff and kind of flip flop. So you'd see underneath. So making those, you know, they're trying to go stylized. I get that with the suckers, but it doesn't feel like suction cups. So, you know, you still want to inform what you're doing. And I think that I think the color is really interesting on all that breakup. It might be too high frequency. If they just scale all that up by like 2 times, I think would really help. Because right now for me, there's a big disconnect between the high frequency color information and the breakup and stuff, and this really clean, big, broad shape. So finding that in between is going to be key. And then getting some kind of material definition to the eyes. I'm not quite sure what those are supposed to be made out of. I think that would help as well. The eyes feel like an afterthought to me. If you spend a little bit more time on that, and they're really, really bright. So be careful with your whites and your blacks, because you don't want to go too bright and too dark. Yeah.
If it's too white, it's gonna reflect all the light. If it's too dark, it's gonna absorb all the light. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, if they just remove the eyes, because I think they're not really doing much, scale up that pattern, fix the zipper, I think that would be an interesting. And then obviously the suckers, making that more stylized, I think that would be an interesting. Again, less is more, right? Keeping it graphic and simple and whimsical.
Yeah.
Some solid advice.
Do you have like those words like really big on the other side of your wall? Whimsical.
No, this is just muscle memory now. Like, it took a while to, obviously coming from film, to understand the design language. But once you're in it, then it's like that's all I see these days. So
yeah.
Good. Well, that's we've gone through 10 or 11 of them now. Do you think we should go through and pick some winners?
Sure.
All right.
Let's do it.
Let's pop our one back on. Cool. So, I mean, we're going to pick 3. Third, second, first.
Yep.
So do you want to go from third, second to first?
Let's do that.
Okay. So I have these up. So I'm going to say okay. I think the third place I would like to give to the, what is it called? The Fortnite Witchy back bling.
Let me just find it. This one?
Yep, that one. Yep.
Wicked.
I think it's very cool. It's on its way, but I think there's a lot of successful elements to it. The second place I'd say would be the Shaman book.
Yep.
Again, on its path, just some tweaking and some rebalancing of things. And then the first place would be the Barracuda for sure.
Barracuda. Let's find this one. This one?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, this one really, I mean, it's very resolved and balanced, and just it's really quite cool.
Awesome. Were you happy with that?
I'm happy with it. Those are great.
Awesome.
And Justin, you gave amazing feedback. Thank you for taking the time and really like giving us detailed breakdowns, and hopefully everyone that was watching got to see not only what he was critiquing, but why he was critiquing it. And I hope the feedback gives you a little more insight into, particularly this challenge was, geared towards a specific property, Fortnite. So you could see really how much they're thinking about when they're making all their assets down to like the texturing and to the modeling. It's very, everything is done deliberately. It's not just like, oh, it'll look good. There's purpose behind each thing.
Yeah, I think when you look at Fortnite characters in the Fortnite world, at a glance, it does seem like, oh, flood fill colors, that's simple, easy. But there's a lot to it to preserve the design language, and obviously I have a much better appreciation for it now that I'm on the inside. But I've never done style. I mean, I haven't really done stylized work in my career. So for me, artistically and creatively, I find it fulfilling in a way that I've never done before. And that was a complete surprise to me, and welcome surprise, because I really enjoy. And to be quite honest, not having to deal with, 500 UDEMs, that is okay by me. That is okay by me. Yeah, that's, you know, half your time in film is just file management as a painter. Yeah, yeah. So,
you know, one thing I was going to ask you, Justin, you know, in terms of, you know, sort of the advice that you've been given back on for this weekly drills, you know, for somebody that's looking at potentially applying for a position at Epic Games, you know, like, can you give them some advice in terms of what that portfolio would look like? I mean, I think, you know, are they tailoring it specifically for Fortnite, or are they trying to do a number, you know, like what does a perfect portfolio look like for somebody that's trying to get into Epic Games?
For me, I think it's tailoring as specifically as possible. And that's not just Epic Games. I want to work at ILM. Okay, then make something look like something ILM would use. I want to work at Pixar. Okay, make something look like they would use a Pixar. You know, there's the end goal. You know what it looks like. You've seen it. There's plenty of reference. Just make it look like that. That's basically it. So anybody who wants to get an Epic, just look through. I mean, there's databases online that have all of these assets in great detail.
Yeah.
So there's no ambiguity to what we do and how we do it with regards to what we're putting into these things. So just study those, and the goal is, hey, and it's like anything, you know, in film. When I was recruiting in film, I like to see reels that I look at something, I'm like, we could use that. I could literally take that wheelbarrow and use it in a shot that we've got that exact asset. So anytime we can transport that asset and say, oh, that's something I think we could use, immediately makes it interesting, because then it's clear that they understand what we're going for.
Yeah. Excellent. And is there any other, you know, like you got the portfolio, what other skills do you look for outside of sort of the, I guess, the artistic portfolio, and obviously some technical skills? Are you looking, you know, like I guess what I'm asking is, you know, the sort of the soft skills, you know, like what resonates to you with a candidate, you know, like where you go, oh, they nailed it, you know? Yes, they have an amazing portfolio, but this extra 10%, like that, they took me there.
Yeah. So I think a lot of students, what they don't realize is when you have an interview, when you're get an email and say, hey, we would like to have a conversation with you, it's no longer about the work. I mean, there are some interviews that will drill you on the work and ask you how you did things, but it's more about, hey, is this a cool person? Is this someone I think I could work with 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day? It's more of a personality match than the work, because they already like the work. And I think a lot of students forget that. They think, oh, it's still about the work. No, we want to just see your thought process. We want to see you actually speak. We want to see what kind of rapport you have with other people. You know, is there any red flags? Because, you know, it's very easy to get a sense of people when you have a 30-minute conversation, hour-long conversation. Is this person cool, or will they be difficult to work with? And for me, any day of the week, if I had two candidates, one was a rock star, impossible to work with, another was really good, but awesome to work with, I'm going to take the really good person 2,000% of the time, because it's not just about the work. It's about people, and it's about how you communicate with other people. And ultimately, we're working with people 24/7. So
you could teach someone.
You know, even now, right, these interview processes are being done more online, so it actually gives people the opportunity to kind of practice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Rather than that sort of going in and that that physical contact or interview. I think, you know, now people have the opportunity to be able to actually go, you know what, let's jump on with other people and actually hone the skills. You know when to talk, know when not to talk, know when to listen, know, you know, just be, you know, like I think there's a lot of skills that people can actually develop quite easily now. And I think, that's great advice.
Yeah, you know, in the road to becoming a visual effects artist or a gaming artist, there is no time spent on the soft skills. It's all about the work. Got to make the work look great. But, you know, your work, and I've said this before, your work will get you in the door, but it's your reputation that keeps you there. You know, you can have the best reel in the world, but if you become an impossible tyrant to work with, nobody's going to work with you. Nobody's going to hire you. And word travels fast. So, you know, keep that in mind. You know, you're working with people, and the faster you can develop your soft skills, the rapport with other people, the better you'll be, because everybody wants to keep someone that they like around, even if they, you know, need a little bit more help. Because again, I'd rather keep that person than someone who I have to have a conversation with every day because someone complained about them, or they're not getting along with this person, not getting along with that person. That's high school drama that no studio wants or needs. So finding ways to be friendly and approachable and likable, I think, is going to be important in a lot of these positions.
It's funny too, because when you look at a lot, like, and I think that's something that I don't see enough people doing on the junior level or student level, is really like going to these websites, going to their career section, and really looking at what they're asking for, because I find these days more than half of the requirements are soft skills. It's like they'll touch on
I think it's even bigger than that.
Yeah, and it's like it's like teamwork, organization, working from like deadlines and collaboration. And I think that's the biggest thing is as a student, you have to switch that mindset of, I have to learn this, to I get to learn this, because you're going to be learning the rest of your career every single year. There's new like software updates, and then when you transition like Justin did, you're transitioning to a new team, possibly new art style. And you have to master that as much as you can at the time that you're given. So it's not necessarily how good are you, it's are you adaptable? Can you go with the punches, like roll the punches, like, and just realize at the end of the day, you are working in movies, you are working in games. This is not like you're not on the front line in the medical field. So I get that there's stress involved.
Exactly.
But you'd be like, this is fun. I'm fun. To do this.
Exactly. I 15, 20 years ago, the industry and the market was very different. It was very difficult to find information online. Learning 3D was not like it is today. And quite frankly, there's a lot of really good artists out there. There's a lot of really good work. And it's easy to do that work with introductions of Substance Painter and PBR Workflow and, advances in Mari and, Unreal Engine and all these other programs that are making it easier. Like I'm doing a personal project right now that I'm jumping back into Arnold. And back in the day, Arnold for Maya was just horrible. Like I didn't know how to do anything. But now it's like, I forgot how to do all this. Now I'm doing it all, and it's all streamlined. So to Justin's point, it's going to become more about people than the work, because anybody can do the work. And not to discredit or take away from the work, because the work is great and there's amazing artists, but there's more of them now than there ever were before. So what's going to stand out is not just the work, but the person. And I think that's going to be important in terms of longevity in this industry.
Absolutely. It's all the diversity, the cultural awareness. It's like how, what is your mentality around all these issues? No, not issues, but top, big, I guess, it's that working in a collaborative environment, even though it's virtual now, but there's still sensitivity around, working with, an international team that, some people just not aware of, right? I had one last question for you, Justin.